Now this release is a big deal. This is the very first console game published by Atlus. It's not quite the first game that they published overall. They had published a handful of Game Boy games before this. But New York Nyankees was Atlus breaking into the big time. They had been a contract developer since 1987, making games to order for various publishers. But the games that they put their real passion behind were the Megami Tensei series of RPGs that Namco published. But Atlus was really unhappy about how Namco treated them during the development of Megami Tensei 2. So they decided to switch their focus to publishing their own games. They've got a few more years before that's all they do. But New York Nyankees is the start of a publishing powerhouse. And it's a powerhouse that we won't see a lot of, since they only published one other game on the Famicom. New York Nyankees, and yes it is New York, not NY, is a platforming game about the travails of a private investigator cat on the mean streets of New York. There are 4 cases that he has to solve before the 5th and final case becomes available. You can do these 4 in any order through this television-style interface. The game itself is a platformer with a very cartoony feel. It's basically a very early mascot platformer. You know, the kind of thing where a blue anthropomorphic animal rides on top of a red biplane flown by his brown-furred fox friend. That hedgehog doesn't come out for another 2 months, by the way. On stages, the A button jumps, and the B button launches a spring-loaded boxing glove. Now you could use this glove to punch out your enemies, but it's really a lot more useful as a method of movement. If the glove hits a solid surface, you're knocked back, and so if you shoot it down, you're launched higher in the air. Similarly, you can bounce it into a wall to launch yourself at an angle. The timing to do these launches can be pretty tight, but it is something that you have to master if you want to get around. The extending arm can also latch onto some ledges, and if that happens, you hit B again to start spinning around on it. While spinning, you're invincible, and you hit B once more to launch yourself. Where you're at in the spin determines which way you go, and I actually found it a bit tough to get the timing down on these. It's just a little bit too fast. I'm sure with practice you could get consistent with it though. The last thing that the arm can do is stick itself out just in front of you and catch items which you can throw back at enemies. This doesn't work as well as you'd like. For one thing, the game is really inconsistent about what can be grabbed and what can't. There's no indication where it's objects of certain size or shape. It's just, you can grab this, but you can't grab that. The other problem is that it takes about 1.5 seconds to pull out your hand to grab something. Inevitably, that's longer than it takes for the enemy to pull out their item and hit you with it. So you basically have to anticipate that something you can catch is going to be thrown at you. And in the end, it does a little bit more damage than your regular punch, but not that much more. There aren't a lot of things to collect as you go through stages. There's health and extra lives, but what you really want to keep an eye out for is money. You get some cash from defeating enemies, and a lot of cash from collecting money bags. If you complete a stage, or get a game over and go back to the television, you retain the cash that you have, and you can spend it on power-ups in the shopping channel. There are 3 attack power-ups, and 1 movement power-up. For attacks, you can launch a bomb in an arc when you push the B button. This is pretty useful for those hard-to-reach enemies. You can also get a super fist that will double your attack, but you can't grab any items when you have that. You can also get a power-up that shoots bullets along with your fist, and the rocket boots are especially handy. Hit A again while you're in the air, and you slow your descent. To use these power-ups, you have to be on a stage, hit select, and then you can activate one of them. The power-ups are a use 'em or lose 'em situation. If you get a game over, you lose anything that you have. But if you use them and die, you still have that same power-up applied with your next life. Something else to be aware of with the continue system is that if you choose to go back to the same stage, you'll continue from the same area that you died in. But if you choose to try a different mission, your progress is reset. The last channel on the television is for bonus games, and there's 3 of these where you can earn some extra cash or lives. The roulette wheel just spins and you get whatever you land on. This game requires that you launch yourself with the spinning grapple, and then land inside one of the buckets. If you hit the edge of a bucket, then you just fall down without getting anything. The final bonus game gives you a time limit, and you have to throw balls into the buckets at the far end. Again, you have to be precise with these, but I found this to be the easiest of the 3 bonus games. As you clear stages in New York Nyankees, the game adds obstacles to levels. More enemies, more things in your way, bosses require more damage, that kind of thing. I think the level design is the biggest problem with this game. There's a lot of places where you just don't really have an opportunity to dodge. You have to move perfectly, or take damage. You have a massive health bar, but it's still not much fun when you have to pass through a continuous stream of homing bullets, or having to do pixel-perfect jumps to avoid damage from boss attacks. New York Nyankees is a game that wants you to be precise, and it's really tough to do anything accurately in it. It's a little bit hard for me to judge how popular this game is in Japan, because a few days before I recorded, it was featured on Game Center CX. Although it did get the Game Center CX price bump, prices have apparently tripled for the game in the past couple weeks, and it wasn't exactly a cheap game before that. My impression of New York Nyankees is that it demonstrates a lot of technical skill, but not a lot in terms of game design. It feels like they came up with the idea for the boxing glove movement, and then failed to refine it or design levels that used it in an interesting way. The game is okay, but it's not nearly as good as you want it to be.